Well, hello, my name's Helen Joy, and we're recording an interview with Marvin Thompson, poet, and I'm doing this for Get the Chance. Marvin, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Marvin Thompson, originally from Tottenham in North London, born from Jamaican parents. I now live in South Wales. I'm an English teacher and also a poet, and I love writing.
You love writing, Marvin.
I do.
You do love writing. We've just been chatting before this, and you are a mine of the most amazing information, and you're an extraordinarily erudite man. So tell me, what project are you working on at the moment?
Um, at the moment, I'm writing a series of villanelles, which are basically, at the moment, very much focused on Black Lives Matter and those kind of topics, mainly because I've been triggered by those topics. I was triggered when George Floyd unfortunately lost his life,
Mm-hmm.
and I was already kind of writing on those kind of topics anyway. But that gave me the whole Black Lives Matter movement gave me permission to be even more direct and honest about my emotions. But then at the same time, not just to kind of say it in a kind of blasé kind of a way, a boring way, to use poetry to kind of be artistic and imaginative with the way I'm talking and dealing with these topics, because these are very personal topics to me. Because unfortunately, when I was a child, I was seeing the same sort of things happening anyway. And I'm thinking, when my children are adults, are they going to be seeing the same things? Probably so as well. So, with my children in the world, it's incumbent on me to do the little bit that I can to help the world get better by seeing some of these issues from the point of view of a Black British person.
And when we were talking earlier, you were talking about the importance of the quality of the work that you produce so that those messages are heard and understood. We were talking about how the accessibility of the mediums that you use. And you used the words message and artistry. What do you mean by that, Marvin?
Right, okay. So often you've got a poem or a writer or someone who will have a message. I don't know, stop cutting down trees. If you just say stop cutting down trees, people are not going to listen to you. It's a really great message. It's an important message, or stop polluting the atmosphere. Massively important message. But if you don't craft it in a way which is interesting, accessible, and powerful in some way, people aren't going to be interested. In 2020, there's too many distractions for people to be wasting their time on half-baked poems. For example, if you're trying your best to make the best poem ever, then that will come through and people will listen. They will understand that you've pushed your artistry in terms of the craft, the quality, the way the poem is delivered, the way it's written. But also they will be also interested in the message because it's being delivered in such a kind of artistic vessel. I think as humans, we do kind of gravitate to things which we feel in ourselves are artistic. Whatever that means, each person's got a sense of what they think is artistic, and when they encounter something that seems artistic, they're more likely to stop, look, listen, and get involved. If they feel it's something that's done in a slapdash kind of a way, what's the point?
That's a really interesting thing to say, because I think we do respond to the quality of things that are put before us, because if something gives off that quality, we know somebody has given it thought. They've given it their best.
Mm-hmm.
So what they are trying to say is important to them.
Yes.
And we are more likely to respond to it. Does that mean also, so say for example, your piece Triptych, which was your response to what happened in Brecon, which I'm sure you'll share with us, you used a format there which you knew that the audience would be comfortable with, so you drew them in.
Yes, I think so. Triptych was a response to Brecon Town Council in their strange wisdom, I'll put it that way. In 2010, they decided to have a blue plaque that honored a slave trader. The reason was because Captain Captain Phillips anyway, he was a benefactor, I think, or some guy and there's a place called Captain's Walk, which is named after him. So he got a plaque, even though he sold humans and made money out of it. Okay. Now, the sestina is a form which is a very complicated form, but if it's done well, if it's written well, if the sestina is written well, it can be a very powerful. It can make a very, very powerful poem. Now, what I did as well with the sestina was normally you have shorter lines in your sestina, and it will sound quite poetic. What I did, I extended to make them have longer lines, so I could get a more of a kind of tone which sounded more like natural speech.
Mm-hmm.
When I actually read the poem, sometimes I think, is this actually really a poem? Because it's like this me talking and getting angry. And I realized that's almost the beauty of the sestina. I hope anyway, I think that's why people responded to it in such large numbers, is because when you see it written, you know it's a poem. You see those repeated words, which happens with a sestina. You get repeated N words, and you can see those words repeated and go, wow, that's a poem, great. But when you're reading it, it just sounds like someone's just giving you some information, talking to you even. So I was very aware that kind of duality of a very strict poetic form, but then the outcome being almost like a conversation. I knew that would trigger people in terms of, wow, that guy's, as you said, thought about this, put thought into this, their message must be important. And therein as well, the actual message that I'm putting across, I make it seem important by actually going through it in quite clear detail.
Mm.
And also a little trick I play, two little tricks. First of all, I involve my children. Often readers, when they read about children, their emotions come out, that kind of protective attitude. But also
Absolutely.
as well, from the first lines, I focus on the body. I think one of the lines is a mouth drying to mud. What I'm doing there is I'm getting the reader to think about their own mouth, their own body, how they might react. I'm putting my reaction to the plaque in their body. I'm letting them embody the words. And actually that really involves the reader. And for a lot of readers, these are going to be uncomfortable feelings they've never felt. And I want them to feel them in their guts, in their bones, in their skin. And to do that, that's why I write about the body. And my bodily experiences become their body experiences. Because if I say mouth, we can all think about a mouth. If I say a mouth drying to mud, we all know what a dry mouth feels like. We all know what dry mud is. So it's very easy to get involved in that little kind of imagery there and actually embody the imagery. And suddenly, before you know it, you are Marvin Thompson living that poem and feeling disgusted. And I think that is the power of the poem, really. It's all tactically kind of thought out for maximum impact.
Maximum impact. And you're right, by making it conversational, you draw us in. And by making those images so visceral, it makes it personal.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it personal. But with this particular piece, you also converted it into a film.
Yes. I was lucky enough to be invited to a collaboration between Literature Wales and Dance Company Wales, National Dance Company Wales. And what happened was I was twinned, if you like, with a dancer called Myhill. And I thought, okay, right, I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit prejudiced. I was like, crikey, Ed's a white guy. I write all these poems about black issues. Well, not really black issues, they're human issues. But in my head, I was thinking, these are all black issues. Ed's not going to be interested in this, but let me just chuck out let me just send him an email of triptychs and he might like it and you never know. But he's not going to like it really, is he? I sent it out, I was a little bit nervous. And then his response was, wow, amazing, so powerful, excellent, we've got to use this. And then that kind of taught me a lesson. I shouldn't be prejudging people. I shouldn't be prejudging people. I might have been twinned with a black dancer who says, you know what, Marvin, I don't want to touch those issues. I don't want to go there. So I love the fact that Ed taught me a lesson there. A lesson that I want to keep for the rest of my life is that as much as I try not to prejudge people, sometimes that can come out. Don't get me wrong, I didn't say this to Ed. I didn't say, Ed, you're a white guy, you're not going to like this. But in my head, I was thinking, it's not going to fly really, is it? But you never know. And then Ed jumped on it and goes, you know, this is really powerful. I believe in this poem. Let's make it into a film. And because the idea would have been to actually write a new poem, but we didn't need to. But then what happened was Ed remixed my poem, the first section of Triptych, which is the letter or open message to Brecon Town Council. He kind of, I don't know, some wizardry he did on the computer where he kind of shortened it and put a kind of deeply kind of sinister, foreboding sort of a soundscape underneath it. That in itself, I was like, wow, Ed, amazing. Because not only is he a dancer, he's also a musician. And then what he did after that was, when he did his part of the filming, he filmed part of it in a Oxfordshire cornfield. And when I saw that, I thought, agriculture, like a plantation. And I thought to myself, whoa, if Ed's taken it to those levels of thought and artistry and imagination, when I do my filming, I've got to try and match him. I've got to try my best to match him. So luckily, I was with my partner and my stepchildren in Dawlish Warren over the summer, and we were obviously at the sea. And as you know, one of the key words in the poem that's repeated is sea. So obviously, it was a great opportunity to get some good filming in. And the one thing Ed inspired me to do was to just play with some ideas, just go as crazy as you want. So at one point, I thought myself, there I'm rolling around in the sea, you know, and my partner's taking to film, and I thought, I want to put some mud on my face. I want to cover myself in mud. And I didn't really know why. It was like an artistic impulse, if you like, inspired by Ed and inspired by the poem as well. And then when you see the film, you see my face covered in mud. And it's like, that's a bit weird, right? It's a bit kind of, what's going on there? And I think what happened in my head was, I thought to myself, I want to look a bit weird and a bit other, a bit non-human, because don't forget, during the transatlantic slave trade, the idea was black people aren't human, therefore it's okay to trade them. So I wanted to get myself as far away from human as possible within the confines of a beach. And I think, without even realizing it at the time, but only realizing it afterwards, covering my face and body with mud was my kind of metaphorical kind of interpretation of being a slave, because then I wasn't human. I didn't look human. I looked weird, odd, other. And that was the idea. And like I said, that's my interpretation of the impulse I had on the beach to put mud on myself. I've got to say, my partner was looking at me like, this is weird. What are you doing, Marvin? She's a bit odd, but she was filming anyway, which was good.
Yeah.
And then I sent Ed loads of footage, and he was impressed. And then we have the film, which I'm very pleased with.
It's a really magnificent piece of film. It's so striking, and I'm really sold on this idea that you're using your skills as an educator to take your messages to as broad an audience as possible, to have as much impact as possible. So people who wouldn't normally pick up a book of poetry, who wouldn't normally necessarily take any notice of what's going on around them, you're grabbing them. You know, you're taking us by the scruff of the neck, and you're saying, you've got to look at this and you've got to think about it. You can't just disregard our joint heritage, our joint history. And we talked a little before about contextualizing things geographically and historically, and the importance of that in that educational piece, and how we would all like our children to benefit so that they are, as to use your words, better citizens. So what happens next with some of this work, Marvin? How do we get that word out to a broader audience so that they understand what's going on around them, and why we are able to sit here having this conversation?
Good question. That's a cracking question. I think, first of all, share the video on social media. Number one.
Yep, we can do that.
Yeah, that's good. And luckily I've got a nice Facebook network which have been sharing it widely. But I also think a video like that allows people to start having conversations, honest conversations about our history. And what I would say is, of course, there's some lovely aspects of British history. Of course there are, okay? But there are also some ugly ones as well. And I think it's only respectful to the people who have been damaged by this history that we actually talk about in honest terms. I think one thing we were talking about earlier was the fact of how many different countries have had their language, for example, erased. You know, there'll be some different nations where for centuries they are speaking one language, and the Brits came along and said, no, you're speaking English. You're going to speak in English, you're going to sing in English, you're going to dream in English, you're going to write your novels in English. And all that history, by the way, was some savage whatever. Don't need to remember it, forget it, you know. And then you've got generations going forward looking at their ancestors thinking, you didn't speak English, therefore you're a bit rubbish. In terms of, like, you know, we talk about mental health in this country quite a lot nowadays, but mental health, you're going through that kind of situation where you've been told that your ancestors were rubbish and you've got to speak another language. Crikey, I can't even begin to think how that is. So I think it's really important that we just, and it's not about, you know, bashing the Brits or bashing our heritage. It's just being honest about our heritage. Like, for example, recently there's a whole thing about singing, what's that song, Rule Britannia, at the proms and so forth. And I was actually really encouraged they weren't going to sing it. I know it's kind of for a COVID reason, but they are going to sing it. And I'm thinking, me personally, I don't like that song. I don't like that song because basically what it's saying is, yeah, we rule the waves. Yeah, we own people. We went out and had wars with people and killed people. Aren't we great? No, you're not. Killing people isn't a good thing. Going to war isn't a good thing. You know, now, yes, sometimes war can be almost a defensive thing. If someone's attacking you, what you're going to do? We get all that. But in general, I don't like the idea of glorifying war. I don't like the idea of glorifying empire when what you'd really do is glorifying people's death. To me, that's disgusting, personally.
I think you're absolutely right. Of course it is. It's a dreadful thing to do. But what you have to be able to do is give people the information to have the conversation, don't you?
Yes.
And to not dissociate people from it, not to push people away. You've got to engage people to start having that honest, genuine debate about what's gone on. And more importantly, for me, is how you use that to go forward. How do you use that to reclaim the lost things where that's appropriate? How do you use that information to allow people to live together more comfortably? That's such an important consequence of these conversations, I think.
I would say,
sorry. No, after you, Marvin.
I was going to say, I agree with you. And what I've been really encouraged by is the fact that a lot of the people that responded positively to my poetic pieces and my film have been white people, you know, from young to older, you know, even to senior citizens. And they've been moved by it, and they've, you know, and they haven't seen it as an attack on them. They've seen it as an education and also as a piece of art, which they can enjoy for the sake of art, you know? And I think that's what's been really, really encouraging for me is that, like I said, a lot of the people I've collaborated with, a lot of people that invited me to stuff have been white Welsh people. I said, you know what? We like what you're doing. We want some more of it, and we want to support it, and not for some kind of performative because it's Black Lives Matter. But no, you're a good poet, Marvin. As far as I'm concerned, is what they're telling me. We like what you do, and we want some more of it. And to me, that's really encouraging. You know, the way that people across different backgrounds are starting now to have these conversations and to spread the messages. And not that things are going to change in a week or a month or a year, but bit by bit, we can become maybe just more aware of each other's culture and each other's backgrounds and each other's histories.
And that's diversity, isn't it, Marvin? That's exactly it. It's embracing our differences.
Yes.
Whatever they are.
Exactly.
You know, we all carry prejudices and we all carry, you know, our quirks and foibles that make us who we are. We all carry the histories that, you know, our parents and our grandparents dump on our shoulders. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we have to have the intelligence and humanity to use it productively, don't we?
Exactly.
And kindly.
Yes, I think so. I think one thing we did talk about as well is the fact that my work isn't didactic, isn't saying you should think this, you should think that. And I think I learned early on that fiction is a great way of saying, hey, have a look at this, you know, and make of it what you will. Hopefully it will entertain you. And if you and that in itself is brilliant. And if you find some other messages underneath that, then brilliant as well. I'm not one for telling people what to think. I'm not here to push you into a corner. I will tell you what I think, and then you do with that as you will. You might say, Marvin, you're talking trash. Fair enough. No problem.
Fair enough. Okay.
No problem. Or you might, and I think as well, one thing, I write mainly kind of more narrative poetry and a sense of story. I think everyone loves stories, whether it's a little bit of gossip or it's a night at the cinema. Everyone loves stories, and I think I love stories, and I love writing anything that's got a sort of narrative to it in some kind of way. And I think that helps to grab the audience as well. The idea that they're on a journey, a story journey.
It invites us in, doesn't it? It invites us in, and it allows us to play out our own views along the way.
Exactly.
What would you say you would like people to take away from our conversation?
Good question, actually. I think, first of all, they should be reading all my books. And
well, of course. That goes without saying, Marvin. We'll have a link to your books, don't worry. Sorry, I pulled your leg.
I think what I want them to take away from it is the idea that in terms of different people with different backgrounds have different stories, different histories, and all of those are important to them, and they should be important to us. Now, obviously, my story may feel more important to me than your story feels important to me. You see what I mean? But I guess what I'm saying is, at the same time, I shouldn't devalue your story. I should be willing to listen to you and just kind of see where you're coming from, because actually, I believe I personally become a richer human being by knowing about you and knowing about your history and your culture and so forth. It doesn't mean I have to like it or hate it or take it on or anything like that. Just that knowledge. For me, that's growth. That enriches me. And as a person, I want to keep growing and learning and being enriched by other people. You know, when I've got many friends from different backgrounds, and what I like about that fact is I get to learn a lot, you know. And also as a poet, the more I learn about other people, the more I've got to write about, you know. So it's imperative, it's important, it's part of my job, if you like, as a poet, that I actually broaden myself and open up. And I hope other people listen to our conversation or reading our conversation, whichever format it comes out in, they can also get that sense of growth through listening to other people, understanding where they're coming from. And I think that's the one key thing that I've noticed happen a bit more now is, in the past, if I talked about issues of race, people would try to tell me their point of view, and their point of view is correct. That's it, done. Marvin, shut up, you're wrong. But now more and more people are willing to listen openly and say, you know what? I want to hear your story. I think the more that we have of that, the better.
And lastly, Marvin, what message would you like your children to get?
Crikey, from my work.
Yeah, from your work.
Oh,
because I know they're one of the biggest inspirations for you.
They are. Crikey. First and foremost, let's get real. There'll be voices out there in the world saying, as a black person, you can be a rapper, you can be a footballer, but that's it. You're done. I want them to realise that wherever they put their mind to, as long as they work really hard and put in the effort like that has done, they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. Okay, and poetry is because, as I say, I'm using very traditional, in terms of English poetry, traditional forms, and even in that kind of enclave, if you like, I'm doing well. I'm being successful, and I want them to. That proves to them, hopefully, when they're older, that anything they put their mind to, carpenter, plumber, solicitor, whatever, if they work hard enough and focus, they can do it. That's the first thing, you know. I want to be that role model, that inspiration. Because I know they will very likely face racism in their life, and I want them to know and feel confident. Wait a minute, you can't say that thing to me. My dad's a poet, he's smashing it. Other people are smashing it in their fields. A black person can be just as successful as anyone else. We're all human at the end of the day, so just, you know, chill out. That's the kind of attitude I want them to have. But also as well, I want them to maybe, just like I did when I was in my teenage years, I had a few kind of issues of, what does it mean to be black and British? Am I black? For me, am I English? For them, am I Welsh? All these sorts of questions and issues will come up most likely. And I think a book like mine might help them to kind of navigate those difficult teenage years when you've got, you know, identity can, even from someone who may be white Welsh, they may have identity issues in terms of, am I woman or am I man, male or female? You know, what am I? We all have.
What am I?
What am I? And hopefully my poetry can help my children to kind of navigate some of that difficult territory. I mean, of course, who knows, they might be appalled by my poetry or just hate reading altogether. We never know. But I'm hoping that at least one of them, I've got 3 children, at least one of them will pick up the book and kind of go, you know what, I'll give this a go. This might teach me a few things.
Yeah. I'm sure it will, Marvin. I have learned so much chatting to you this evening. It's just been the most enjoyable couple of hours, but it's also really made me come away and really think about a different way of looking at things and a different way of using the medium that are available to us, whether that's spoken word, written word, conversation, visuals, to get messages across. And we have to, all of us, be adept at that, I think, going forward. Our world is changing around us and we have got to adapt with it. So thank you, Marvin.
Pleasure.
I have thoroughly enjoyed your company.